Hey folks, it's Joe Amditis, and you're here for Prompt Engineering 101 for Journalists. I am Associate Director of Operations at the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University, and I'm going to walk you through this module. This first module is going to be a basic introduction to prompts for LLMs like ChatGPT, Claude, etc. We'll start with a basic overview of sort of what an LLM is, kind of how it works, although we won't get too deep into that. Then we'll talk a little bit about, what prompting is, how do you do it? We'll jump into the anatomy of a prompt, what a prompt is and what it looks like, what are different types of prompts, what are different types of tasks that you might ask a bot to do for you or with you. We'll talk a little bit about verification and making sure that you have robust human oversight to make sure your outputs make sense and that you're not just sort of like handing everything over to the bots. And then we'll get into a little bit more complex stuff. We'll break down some chain of thought prompting. We'll talk about structuring your prompts and your requests to make sure that you get the best outputs. And then finally, we'll talk about a few edge cases, and we'll talk about moving into a more standardized or routinized way to prompt these models so that you're not just sort of having conversations every time. So without further ado, let's jump into the first section here and talk a little bit about what chatbots are, how they work, and how they might work for you in your journalism. So to start us off, what are large language models? How do they work? The truth is, it's way too complicated for me to get into the specifics of this, but essentially all you need to know is that these tools, and they are tools, are autocomplete on steroids. They take all of the information that is in their training models, their vast, often stolen quantities of information, and they combine that and the relationships between the words and concepts that are expressed via things called vectors, which is essentially a mathematical representation between the distance and direction between two concepts or words. And then they combine that with any user instructions or prompts that you give it, the questions you ask it, the conversation history that you've had with the model or in that conversation or that chat. And then there are system instructions and prompts that are in the background that guide the model in terms of how it should respond, that the creators of the models put in there to make sure that the responses are appropriate. Those things can include safety guidelines, ethics guidelines, copyright guidelines, and all kinds of stuff that people are constantly trying to undermine. So with that out of the way, and again, I urge you to check the supplementary readings for this module, where there are all kinds of resources that I've gathered and presented for you to really dive much deeper into what this means. But for our purposes, we're going to move a little bit past that now, and all you need to know is essentially these things remix, reshuffle, and regurgitate the vast quantities and repositories of words and information that they have in their model-based data, and they base the responses on the type of question or query or prompt that is given to it by the user, in this case, you or me. So what you're looking at here is, let me move myself over here a little bit. What you're looking at here is a general overview of the anatomy of a prompt. These 5 different parts or components of a prompt don't appear in every prompt. Not every prompt needs every element in this slide, and some prompts might even need more. It depends on the kind of task you're working with. But for the most part, when we're talking about journalistic or reporting or editing or publishing tasks, these are the things that you need at least to include in all of your prompts. And there may be some edge cases down the line where you either need more or you need different types of components, but for our purposes, focus on these 5. So we start with our introduction. An introduction just states the overarching goal or requirement or task that you're asking the bot to do. What are you asking for? Why are you talking to this tool? You can include a greeting if you want. Some people find that that's, that gives them better responses. There's no real data on whether or not being nice to the LLM actually does anything, but suffice it to say, this is what you would like it to do. So you would start off by saying, I want you to summarize this article I wrote and give me 5 key takeaways. Then you move on after that. You're going to give it some specific instructions. What kind of takeaways? What do you want it to focus on? What do you want it to highlight? What is the article about to sort of help set the tone and the vibe for this? Then you're going to need to provide your context, which in this case would be the text of the article that you'd like it to summarize, or the list, or whatever you're giving it that is based on or related to your introduction and your instructions. Then following that, or before you hit send the first time, you're going to want to add things known as constraints. So these can be things you don't want the bot to do. Don't use title case. Don't write in the first person, but it can also be that you can set the style or the tone of the responses that you want. I want really concise, direct, straightforward responses. I don't want any emotion. I don't want you to give me some extra banter. Don't focus on anything related to this topic. I only want them about this. So you're just really fine-tuning, you're drilling down to give it exactly the type of content you'd like it to return to you. And this will help save you time later because in many cases, the bots sort of ramble for a little bit, or they'll give a bunch of, preamble at the beginning. Sure, I'll blah, 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 blah. And then they'll restate your question. You just want to tell it exactly what you want to get back from it. And then finally, it can be helpful to re-emphasize and reiterate the most important aspects of the previous 4 components. So you can do things like remind it, that this is just a summary. You can tell it it's for a blog or for a newsletter blurb or something like that. And you can sort of reiterate and emphasize the things that you want it to sort of focus on the most because it appears more than once in your request. So when you are using these tools, again, it's really important to remember to define the context, not just the context as in the supplementary information or the text of the article, but really start by giving it the context of what you're going to be doing with this information, telling it what kind of audience these responses will be catered towards or be presented in front of. What are you doing with this? Do you need these list of takeaways because you're making a slide deck or presentation? Are you going to use it for an outline for a story you're writing? Are you doing this as part of an interview process or prep process? So you really want to give it as much information as you can within reason there to sort of set the stage for the type of response and the type of information that it's going to highlight and focus on. And this can also involve incorporating any specific knowledge or skills. So if you have specific information or if you want it to call on or to emulate specific professions, like you want to do multimedia marketing, or you want to have it assume the role of a strategic communications professional, or you want to be, have it work with you as a sort of interview coach. You can give all of these specific skills and knowledge cues to the bots, and it will do its best to sort of emulate and imitate that. And again, you always want to sort of consider and mention the type, style, and tone of the responses that you'd like to get. This just saves you time on the back end, so you don't have to go back again and edit your responses and constantly ask it to do this, or that. And those constraints can be really, really important, and they're really going to make the difference between a mediocre to bad response to an actually useful one that then you can take and do things with. So just one more wrap up, be specific, provide context when necessary, try to use examples and structured requests, which we're going to cover in module 2 of this MOOC. You also we're going to learn a little bit about encouraging the models to use step-by-step reasoning, especially when we get to more complex tasks like data analysis, interview prep, or even documentation. And you always want to come back and you want to try to tweak things and refine them based on the initial response you get, so that once you're done, you sort of wrap that up into a single prompt. And in part 2 of this module, you'll see exactly what that looks like. Don't forget to try to take advantage of the knowledge base and the training models that these bots are based on and that they have at their disposal, but also be mindful of what these things can and can't do. They can't actually think, they can't actually understand human experience and emotion. They can only imitate it. And while it may be convincing sometimes, they're not human and they're not sentient. And it's important to understand that you're talking to a computer, but instead of using code or whatever, you're using the English language or whatever language you are speaking to the bots in. And this is really powerful because it does open up a lot of possibilities, because being able to talk to the computer and get it to do what you want used to require you to speak computer code or write computer code. And now, within reason and within certain limitations, you don't have to immediately know how to write good code in order to get the computer to do things for you. And of course, there's a whole conversation about what good code is and whether or not the computers can actually write good code, but that's for another day. And then, of course, you always want to make sure you're checking and evaluating the quality of the responses you're getting. Anything, just like anything that appears immediately, instantly in front of your face, you cannot just simply trust that what it's saying is true. It may sound very convincing, and that is the whole point of these things, is to sound very convincing. They are not fact machines. They are not truth machines. They are word machines, and words can be used in millions of different ways, one of which is to mislead or to lie or to misstate in an inaccurate way. And if you don't be careful, if you're not careful and vigilant and rigorous with your evaluation and your fact checking and your verification, you will be very embarrassed, and it will bite you, because it will happen if you're not careful. And just like any text that you receive, whether it's from a freelancer or a staffer, you do not just take it as gospel. You fact check it, you verify it. That's what journalism is about. So in the next video, we are going to actually dive into some actual journalistic use cases for these tools, and we're going to see how they work, particularly ChatGPT to start. And then from there, we will expand and look into context and structured prompts and all that. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video.